Hello and good morning. In the interest of time, we'll go ahead and begin. We have numbers of people still joining us this morning, so I'll begin just with a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, my name is Patria. I'm an advocacy project worker with Inclusion Ireland. We're delighted to have you here this morning. We have near to 80 people so far on the call, and we've had many more who have registered to be with us here this morning. This morning, we are going to look at life after school. Where am I going and how do I get there? But before we begin, I just wanted to note that no one's picture will be on the screen, nor will people be able to speak. However, questions can be put into the Q&A, which I've seen some people are using already. Thank you very much. And I will share those with our panelist, Alison Doyle, after she has shared her presentation with us here this morning. The recording will be on our website, the Inclusion Ireland website. It will be under post-school options on our a specific web page, and that will be launched likely next week. So we encourage you to share that to let people know that if they're not able to attend, that it will be made available. I wanted to welcome you to this first of 4 sessions. Many of you have registered for all 4, this one being around planning, the next session being around education, third level options, the third being on employment, and the last being on community supports. And if you haven't registered, there's still time to do so on the same registration link, which can be found on the Inclusion Ireland website. This post-school options for people with intellectual disability idea emerged over 3 years, a consultation and conversation with people primarily in the Midlands. I'm based in Offaly. And in those conversations with people, it was identified that family members and people with intellectual disability were in need of further resources to look at the future. The work was led by the Laois Offaly Children and Young People Services Committee, known as CIPSI, here in Laois Offaly, and Inclusion Ireland. A steering committee with CIPSI has guided this particular outcome with this webinar series. I wish to thank them for their time, expertise, and contribution to today's event. Additionally, I'd like to thank Healthy Ireland for the funding and also for the recognition by them in the importance of such an event. Today and our upcoming sessions are designed to provide a snapshot, a very brief one, an overview of possibilities. And the hope is by the end of the hour that you, the listener, the participant, either a young person with decisions to make, or a family member, a support person, or a professional may have increased your understanding on how to plan for the future. Just a note, Inclusion Ireland celebrates 60 years this year as a membership-led organization. We work to advance the human rights of persons with intellectual disability, and our platform is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. It is your voice and experience, the person with intellectual disability, and that of your family members and support people that drives our work. And we invite you, if you have not already, to join Inclusion Ireland in this work. To begin this morning, we're going to launch a poll here in a moment. And if you may contribute, the poll will be open for 2 minutes just to get a sense of who you are now at 100 attendees for this event, who you are, and to give our panelists an idea of who's attending this morning. So if you take a few moments, if you see the poll there on your screen, answer the questions. They're coming in. Thank you very much. We're looking to see who is in our audience, where you're from, and what's your biggest concern with post-school options. Take just another 10 seconds and we'll close the poll. So now we see that we have about 2% of people participating today. Of our 112 participants are people with intellectual disability. 48% of family members, professionals 31%, other professionals at 18%, and other people participating at 1%. People, looks like we have a bit of a mix. Ulster, we have 3%, Connacht 13, Munster 14, Leinster 69, and others 1%. And our most important question this morning is, what is your biggest concern with post-school options? And number one, that's the one that has driven this event, 40% in terms of lack of guidance, 37% with limited options, 3% with cost, and 19% with lack of support. Close that out there. And we're going to launch into our panelists now. Hello, Alison.
Hi, how are you?
I'd like to introduce Alison Doyle. Alison has practiced as a teacher, a school principal, and educational psychologist across primary, secondary, and third level education contexts for almost 40 years. She has a particular interest in supporting young people with special educational needs and disability in management of educational transitions. In 2018, she collaborated with Progressing Accessible Supported Transitions to Employment, or PACE research, which investigated concepts of supported transition for school leavers with intellectual disability. And she continues to research and publish in this area. Alice is a part-time lecturer. Alison is a part-time lecturer for a number of postgraduate programs in Dublin City University and Trinity College, a member of the Association of Educational Psychologists in the UK, British Psychological Society, the Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health, and Psychological Society of Ireland. You've given me tongue twisters, Alison. So, Alison, we thank you for being here this morning, and we look forward to your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen with you in a moment, but I'm actually also going to switch the camera off so I'm not distracted by myself talking. And hopefully I will be able to get this underway without too much of... No, I don't think that's the one that I wanted to do. Sorry about this, folks. Share screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, hopefully you can see that screen now. So my task this morning is just to provide a broad overview really of the kind of options that are available. And I know that the following sessions in this month are going to go into more detail on some of these aspects. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about life after school, where am I going, and how do I get there? And this is very much focused on opportunities in Ireland. So what I want to talk to you about, firstly, is preparation and planning for transition itself, to look at some of the essential skills required for further education, training and employment, and then looking into the future and the kind of choices and opportunities that are available. So the question really is, when do I need to begin planning for the transition from school to life after school? In America, under the IDEA Act, that transition planning really should start from the age of 16, and there are dedicated transition services to help with the management of that process. In the UK, education and healthcare plans should begin at least 2 years before the young person leaves school. So I would say, from our perspective here in Ireland, because we don't have anything enacted in legislation that requires transition planning, we should be thinking about this at least 2 years before leaving school, because it takes time to gather the required information and to investigate all of the options and choices. Let's take a look firstly at preparation and planning. So I have some images on the right-hand side here, a recipe and the ingredients. And this is very much how I think of the concept of transition planning. It seems inconceivable to me that we would make plans for the future without gathering our ingredients or our information, and without having our recipe or our plan on how we're going to use that information. And even when we're very familiar with making a recipe or cooking a meal, we often still need to go back to that recipe just to check that we're following it correctly. And I see that as very much the point of a transition plan. So rather than stepping into the unknown, you are very much engaging with the known. This involves research.
I'm in it now, Julie.
Great. Finding out.
And then it's gone. Yeah, there it is now.
Discovering information. We need to do our research.
Yeah, I'm in it.
We need to reflect on what we found out. We need to think about that information. And then we need to take all of our findings and we need to decide, we need to make a choice. But those are 3 very important components, and they have to come in a very particular order, indeed in that order. And that's something I want to talk about today. In terms of concrete information, there are a series of leaflets provided by the National Council for Special Education, planning for life after school in terms of adult day services, employment, education and training, post-school options, in higher education, in further education and training, and information on rehabilitative training and adult day services. So what do they provide? You can download them from this link on your screen here. Well, they provide signposting to what choices could be available. They provide signposting to some of those providers. But that is as much as they provide in terms of making an actual plan. So this is very much just a starting point in terms of thinking about where to go for more information. Really, what we need is more of a dedicated plan, something concrete. This, for example, I've taken from an entity called Inclusive Solutions in the UK. It's a very particular, it's not the only one, but it's a particular planning tool called PATH, Planning Alternative Tomorrows with Hope. And it was first introduced by Jack Pierpoint and his colleagues in the 1990s. And it's very much concerned with identifying the dream and everything flowing from that dream, and all of the goals and all of these structures and all of the plans and all of the steps that flow from that goal. And I'm going to try and flesh that out for you in the remainder of the slides. So what does that mean exactly? You begin with the dream. What is your personal vision for the future? What do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Where do you want to go? How would you like your life to be different? What do you want your daily life to be? This is the dream, and everything comes from the dream. And then step 2, we ask the person, the individual, to imagine that a year has gone. Where do they see themselves after that year? What do they see themselves doing in 1 year time? What goals have been planned? What goals have been reached? Then the next step is to actually look at where you are now and to reflect on where you would like to be in a year's time. Step 4 is incredibly important. Who is part of your team? Because the goals are not going to be achieved on your own. Who is going to help and support you? Who's on board with your plan? Step 5, how exactly are we going to build the skills that we need? What do we need to do? And then step 6 is a review after 3 to 6 months. Where are we? How much further along are we on that plan? So to give you an idea of what I mean by this, I've taken this image from Inclusive Solutions website. And this is the kind of illustration, this is the work that goes on. It's very important that this is done in real time, in person, with the young person, and drawing this out in a very visual way. So on the right-hand side, we see the dream there. What is it that we're striving towards? Perhaps to have my own living space, to be going out with friends, to be working, and then to look at where you want to be in 1 year's time. Perhaps dating, having started swimming lessons, having joined a choir, for example, attending adult learning. Then if we look to the far left hand of the screen, a summary of where we are now in our life and what kind of experiences we have. And who are we going to enlist? Who are we going to enroll to help us? Who are going to be the members of our team? And in this illustration, you can see there's Jane, David, Frank, Debbie, Peter, Sally. It's really important to name those people. And the kind of skills and strengths that we need to address in order to achieve that dream. So to activate that plan, we need to identify the dream. This is where our research comes in. What do other people think I would be good at? Looking around me, what jobs do other people do? And I think this is a really important exercise. When you are out in the community, when you're out doing errands, when you're out engaging in activities, take a moment to stop and look around. What is it that other people are doing in terms of work? Because perhaps I'd like to do that too. What goes on in my local area? What are the opportunities? Who do I know that can help provide me with that opportunity? What activities should I be involved in to reach that dream? And it's important to get out into your local community and gather that information. Some examples here of getting ideas of what you want your dream to be. It's a very difficult thing to do. There's an assumption that we all know exactly what we want to do when we leave school, when in fact that's not the case. It's habitual in Ireland to perhaps progress to college without really knowing what you want to study in college. It's useful to look at things like, for example, career videos. This is an organization called I Could, and they have very short career videos. They last no longer than 3 to 4 minutes with people talking about the kind of job that they do. They also, on that particular website, have a very short career discovery quiz. It only takes less than 5 minutes. It looks at your strengths, what you're like as a person, what your personality type is. And it gives you an idea of, it associates you with an animal so you can see what type of career options are associated with each of those profiles. Another strengths investigation tool, career investigation tool, this one is from America, it's My Next Move. It's an interest profiler. There are no right or wrong answers, but there are a series of questions to answer. For example, would you rather learn to play a musical instrument, or would you rather learn how to build something? And at the end of those questions, you're presented with a profile. Another interesting website, again with career videos, again in America, but there's a wealth of career videos here that cover absolutely every job that you could possibly think of. Again, very short, but taking you right to the point of what type of job that is and what it involves. These are really good tools for starting a conversation about, could you see yourself doing that? Is that the type of thing you'd like to do in your life? And then get an idea, a starting point to investigate all those different options, because it's hard when people ask us, well, what do you do when you leave school? Or what do you want to do? So research. Once you've had a look at some job profiles, once you've looked around your local community and observed what other people are doing for a job, the next set of questions really is there such a thing as training or a course for the type of job I want to do? Where does that take place? Is it possible geographically to access that course? How much does it cost? How long does that training take? Very importantly, if I'm engaging in training, do I lose any social welfare payments? Can I earn whilst I'm learning? What do I need to do, and who do I need to talk to? Are there open days or information days? Where do I go for more information? So this is the beginning of your plan. These are the questions that you need to have an answer for in order to progress. This is the National Framework for Qualifications. It's the ladder of qualifications, and it's really important to understand where different training courses sit on this ladder of qualification. In general, in special schools, students pursue a junior certificate school program, which is at level 2 or 3, depending on what subjects are included. And then we have level 4 or 5, leaving certificate vocational programs, and level 5, leaving certificate and leaving certificate applied. And moving on to QQI level 6, which are higher certificates and advanced certificates. And the point about this ladder is that people jump on and off the ladder throughout their lifetime. That's why it's called lifelong learning. There's generally perceived to be quite a rush for some young people to jump from level 5 right up to the top of the ladder. I think a more progressed, a slower progression is a good idea. It gives you time to figure out what you want to do and to change course, to change pathway if that's what is required. But it's helpful to understand when you see programs and they have a QQI level attached to them, what that actually means. Leaving certificate vocational program, you can apply through the CAO for progression. There are points attached to the level of achievement that you acquire during the LCVP. In terms of leaving certificate applied, whilst they do not meet entry requirements for admission directly to some courses, they do qualify you to undertake a QQI or further education course to become eligible to third level courses. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, this is again part of your research. I've just taken Technical University Dublin as an example, TUD, what used to be DIT. So for those QQI level 5 and 6 applicants, people who've progressed from school to a level 5, there are particular access routes that can be applied for. And you're going to be discover more about this, I think, in one of the later talks in this series. So there are specific entry requirements, and I would suggest that if that's a pathway that you think is best suited to your dream or ambition, that you investigate the QQI level 5 pathways within institutions in your local area. Qualifax is the national qualifications database. On the screen here, I did a search, filtered out for QQI level 3 and for the county of Offaly. And that provided me with 7 results. As we can see here, some through the National Learning Network and some through the Further Education Centre and the Education and Training Board. And those encompass art and design, employability skills, general learning, health and well-being, and sports and recreation. It's very important with Qualifax that you make sure that you filter out all of the different choices using the search terms. So in fact, it might be slightly easier to use a different website. So for example, Fetch Courses really has only further education and training options. So it's somewhat easier to filter out your choices here. And again, I looked at QQIs for the Offaly area, and they came up with 23 courses. So from pathway to employment, hotel and restaurant skills, office skills, nursing studies, hospitality, and traineeships. So those are very useful tools to at least get a sense of what is available in terms of further training and education in your own local area. You can also go directly to the education and training boards, and I know they also have open days, and go and have a look at their local offerings for further education and training. In terms of higher education, and I think the next session is going to look at this in more detail, there are 10 institutions currently which provide opportunities for young people with intellectual disability to progress to a higher education institution. So we see a full range of options there, from post-school, further education and training, to higher education. There is also an information opportunity. This is called Better Options. It's an online college fair for students with disabilities. It takes place every year, every November, in a different venue across the country. Obviously this last year, it was online via Zoom. And originally, when it first started, it was a showcase, if you like, for higher education, colleges and universities to present their offering in terms of disability services. Over the last few years, this has really grown and developed. So it's no longer just confined to higher education. There are service providers in further education and other adult services and other funding opportunities. So it's a free event, and I would always suggest that you attend any of these opportunities to get more information. I'd like to talk to you very briefly about the Fund for Students with Disabilities, because I know cost was one of the questions that was mentioned. The European Social Fund provides funding through the Fund for Students with Disability, which is administered by the Higher Education Authority. But in 2020, responsibility for the Fund for Further Education and Training was given to SOLAS. There's a very good document here on how the fund works, the guidelines for education and training boards and further education institutions. This one, I've the web link down there, this one I downloaded from Sligo. And it provides details of the funding opportunities for support in college. So I've just taken a few screenshots of some of the information in there. So provision of funding is dependent on an assessment of need, and that assessment of need is tied to what supports are required to pursue specific courses, and that requires a disclosure of disability. There are specific eligibility criteria for support under the fund. So students must have a verifiable disability. They must meet the residency criteria for Ireland, and they must participate on a full-time approved course. And that funding is provided for things like assistive technology, non-medical helpers, a personal assistant to support you through college. For example, a note taker, for learning support, for transport, for help with exam supports. So I would recommend that you download that document and read all of the criteria that are applied to it. And this is the important thing. In terms of disabilities that are eligible under that funding for support through further education and training, they're very specific. Autism, attention deficit disorder, ADHD, visual impairment, hearing impairment, dyspraxia, mental health condition, neurological condition, a significant ongoing illness, for example, diabetes or heart condition, a physical or mobility disability, and specific learning difficulties. It does not specify general disability or general intellectual disability, although I do remember seeing, I think it was in 2017, some reference to this in a previous funding document, but not in the more recent versions. So if you believe that you meet these criteria and you know that you will require support to pursue your QQI course, then you negotiate this, you apply. When you're applying for your course, you need to contact the disability service or the disability officer that is present in the College of Further Education and ask them about access to the fund for supports through college. Just moving on to training and work experience. Again, I'm not going to go into depth about this because speakers in later sessions are going to tell you more about this. But CARE, for example, is an organisation that helps access training and work experience. And they have most recently been involved in the Oireachtas Work for Learning programme, or OWL. Similarly, and I know Des Henry from Walk will be doing a talk later in this series, I have some fantastic programmes, both in the Dublin area and in County Louth. And they also participate in the Oireachtas Work for Learning programme. It is really important, valuable experience in not just getting work experience opportunities, but being fully supported to do so, and to be fully supported in accessing and applying for employment. And then last but not least, apprenticeship opportunities. These have moved on quite considerably from the days when they were mostly connected to construction. They involve a diverse range of choices, such from hair and beauty to computing, to ICT and auctioneering even, and insurance, and also accountancy. Just want to look now at some of the essential skills really that need to be acquired, and these have to be built into a plan, because you can identify your dream, you can identify your destination, you can land on a pathway or a process in which to get there, but you also need the skills to support you. So these for me are very important: personal skills, learning skills, technologies and supports, learning to be independent, and managing that bridge to transition into life after school. So what do I mean about building personal skills? Self-awareness, self-determination, and self-advocacy all lead to confidence, and that's so important. So in terms of whether you're in further educational training or in work experience or in employment, you need to have the confidence to ask for help, to ask questions, to follow the rules and procedures in college and work, to be proficient, to turn up on time. These are all very important aspects. I was talking to one young person a couple of years ago and their family, and one of the difficulties they had on work experience was not having the confidence to self-advocate and to tell somebody in their that they were working with or in their department that actually they hadn't had a break all day and they needed to go for a break and they needed to go for lunch. It's a really important skill to have, to know how to ask for help and to be confident in doing so. So we need to look at all of the different tasks that are involved in developing things like self-determination, and we need to work through these. We need to develop them, and we need to be able to tick them off and know that they have been acquired. So using checklists is very valuable. It gives you a clear picture of what you have completed and what is yet to be completed. In terms of developing learning skills, a whole set of skills has already been developed in school. But in terms of continuing that learning, being able to work independently, again, knowing how to ask for help and support with that learning. Who do you ask? Who do you go to? Is there a named person? Is there a dedicated adult? Where do you go to find out information? And very important, I think, an understanding of how the part-time or full-time job, the work that you are doing, how your further education course, how does this fit into a bigger picture? How what you are doing feeds in to what everybody else is doing and feeds into society, the community. In terms of using human and technology support, you may have a long history and experience of human and technology support throughout your schooling. What happens when you leave school? Take a look, it's very important. What supports do I have in school now? In what ways do they help me? And actually, will they be useful at college or in the workplace? But perhaps they need to be changed because the supports that were relevant to school may not be relevant to your new situation. And how can technology help me? More importantly, again, down to cost, who is going to provide it? And actually, what is my skill level at using those supports? Learning to be independent, incredibly important. Having all the adaptive functioning skills that are needed to manage successfully education, training, and employment. So even simple activities, making sure that you get your lunch, knowing how to manage your laundry, knowing how to handle money, and that includes, for example, a debit card, being able to travel to college or work confidently, creating a good routine and managing that routine, and having good social skills and knowing that you are confident in using those even in an unfamiliar environment or situation. So again, a good task list is very useful here. Knowing what you have achieved, what you've got left to achieve. There's some very good resources out there to build on social thinking and social skills, software programs, for example, and interactive videos. These all require lots of practice. And then finally, managing that transition bridge. What is going to happen? What do we need to do to prepare for that transition out of school? What are going to be the differences? It's really important to discuss these. What are the differences between the situation I'm in now and the situation that I'm going to? We need to prepare for change and we need time to prepare for that change. We need to be aware of what we are entitled to. When we just looked at the Fund for Students with Disabilities supports, what am I entitled to? Although general learning disability, intellectual disability was not part of that list, I would argue under the Disability Act and Equal Status Act that it should do. What support do you need? What finding out activities could you engage in right now? And who are the go-to people who can help me? So now I'm coming into the final part of this and hopefully going back towards the beginning to talk about the choices and opportunities and making that plan. One of the most important factors, I believe, is being very certain about whose ambitions and whose dreams we're talking about when we make that plan, because they have to be completely person-centered and everybody has to be on board. And this is why it takes at least 2 years before leaving school to get started on that plan, because they really need to be teased out. So to give you an example, this is a very good book. It's about successful employment for autistic people, but yeah, having read it, I think it applies to everybody because it looks at skills and strengths and challenges and how to identify how those feed in to good employment choices. And one of the examples that I remember, and I have a picture here of, this is a stock photograph, it's not a particular individual from the book, but this is somebody who works in a hotel. And one of the examples from the book was a young person who really, really wanted to be a pilot, expressed the dream and desire to be a pilot. And it took quite a lot of teasing out and discussion to establish, by looking at all the different roles and all the different tasks that a pilot had to fulfill, a lot of discussion to gradually tease out that the reason why they wanted to be a pilot was because they really liked the uniform. And that led to a further discussion about other types of employment that also had uniforms attached to them. And in the book, it goes on to describe how, in the end, that young person found employment working in a hotel and enjoyed wearing his uniform every day. So that's the kind of exploratory work that needs to happen as part of your path plan. This is another resource. Again, it has an autism focus, but again, it's a resource that can be used by everybody. It's an interactive PDF workbook, but it's very useful looking at the different sections like applying for employment, interviews, finding work experience, communication and social skills, managing anxiety. This is a very useful tool to collaborate on completing this workbook because it starts the discussion about what steps need to be taken and what skills need to be developed. And you can download it from that link on the screen there. Another good book here from the Brothers of Charity in Clare, very, very interesting. Self-employment options for people with disabilities. From hairdressing to jewelry designer, cartoonist, dog grooming, childcare, acting. It's well worth reading because there's a lot of really important information and reasoning behind looking at self-employment opportunities. So just to finish, I wanted to show you an example of using the path planning tool that I did recently with a young person. So as you can see on the right here, we started off with a dream. And this young person's dream job was to become a makeup artist. So the dream is to find a job or start a business perhaps in hair, beauty and makeup, but also on a personal level to visit Korea and look at the K-pop artist because that happens to be her absolute passion. So then take one step back, looking at the goal, what needs to be achieved by the end of the first year. perhaps to complete training for working as a makeup artist, to find and complete some work experience, and to plan and save for that holiday. And then all the way back to the far left-hand side now, looking at what is available now, what do I have now, what am I doing now, and who is going to help me. I've removed any personal identifiers here, but actually these were named people, my family, friends, people from organizations, a good career facilitator, perhaps a school guidance counselor, a key worker. It's really important that those people are working in or available in your local area, because they know what the opportunities are in your local area, and they have the facility to support you in that. What type of skills do I need to achieve in order to reach that dream? Gaining retail experience, progressing some good conversation skills, learning how to manage money, hygiene for my makeup kit, perhaps taking photographs and creating a portfolio. And then looking at first steps, identifying courses, identifying training. What post-school providers are there? What are the costs of my dream holiday? And then what is to be achieved in the next month and by the end of the next 3 to 6 months. And again, it's very important to look at resources in the local area. For example, looking at different courses, but also what are the opportunities in terms of private training providers in the local area. So I asked this young lady, charming young lady that I met when we started this plan, if she would record a short piece about the pathway planning that we did, and hopefully this technology is going to work.
Hi Tara, we're going to talk about what you're going to do when your secondary school is finished. So what's your dream?
My dream is a makeup artist.
Great. And have you made any plans to get started on getting your dream?
Well, I didn't do it because I wasn't on YouTube. I was looking at people doing makeup, so I want to practice doing some makeup.
Good. And have you looked at anything for college?
Yeah.
What have you looked at? Have you looked at?
I look at fan. I look at foundation, eyeshadow, mascara, blusher, or lips.
Great. And have you looked at any courses for beauty?
I do, yeah. And
Good.
I like doing everything, but it makes me happy for I do.
Okay.
Out.
Okay. And who helped you with making the plan?
Well, it's actually my mother and or my father or my sister and or my neighbors as well. I like doing my makeup on my neighbors or my friends and on my sister, not my father.
And did you do any Zoom? Did someone help you with Zoom information?
I do, yeah. I have a person is makeup artist. Her name is Maria O'Neill.
So unfortunately, we were interrupted by the dog there, but I think you can see that that was after 2 or 3 very short sessions on creating that path and starting to think about, as you can see there, who the supporters are going to be, and to look at what the next steps need to be as well.
Hi Tara.
So I suppose in summary, do your research. Take those opportunities, go out into the community and find out what's available in your local area and who can help you. Start early. This has to be done quite a time before leaving school to make sure that you are fully informed. Ask for help. Go to as many events and speak to as many people as possible. And one important thing as well I want to say is, when you are made an offer of particular services or pathways, and you are perhaps it's suggested to you that this is a time-bound offer and that a decision has to be made now. Before you allow yourself to be railroaded into that decision, ask for that information. Where does it say that I have to make that choice by a particular date. Show me the line, show me the page, show me the document which says that I have to make that choice now, or I may not get an opportunity again. So I have a Facebook page when I always try to post useful information or signposts or things that I think can be helpful. So please do take a look at that if you have time. And that's pretty much me finished, and I hope you found that to be useful.
Thank you, Alison. We have a few questions that have come in, and if there are further questions, if you may put them into the Q&A. One of the questions, Alison, that came through is from a parent who is looking at a combination of day services and, for example, NLN. You know, is it possible to do both, and how might that be coordinated, if you may give some guidance?
Well, I think that depends on area-specific providers. In theory, of course, as part of your plan that you negotiate with adult day services, of course, you should be entitled to attend further education and training opportunities, work experience, and even some part-time employment. And this goes back to what I was saying about having the conversation. It's very, I would never take it as a given if somebody said to me, oh, well, you're not allowed to do that, or National Learning Network won't allow you to do that, or that isn't possible, because that's hearsay from somebody else. You should always go directly to the service provider in your local area and ask the question. Make the appointment, have a list of questions with you when you go. I would always say, actually, send the questions in advance. When you have your meeting with them, go through the questions so everybody knows what you're talking about. And actually, when you finish the meeting, you send back the responses to them. This is what we talked about. This is what you told me. So that there is firstly a paper trail, and secondly, everybody's on the same page. So yes, it's possible. And yes, you need to approach those providers directly and ask them what is possible.
Great, thank you very much. Another query came in around the careersportal.ie, and do you find that helpful?
I don't personally use careersportal.ie. I like to find things that are specific to the individual. That's why it's really important to spend that time planning with the individual about their particular aspirations, because it requires a little bit of investigation, a little bit of work to find out the specific information that's unique to that individual. Careers portals are really useful as a general signposting. So, for example, Careers Portal also has a skills profiler, and they also have careers videos. But I think visiting many different similar resources is the most useful thing to do.
Okay. Get a good variety.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. There was a query too around which colleges have access to supports, SNA supports, college courses. Where was the best place to look for that information?
Okay, that depends really on whether you're talking about further education or whether you're talking about higher education. In higher education, generally there are dedicated disability services, so they provide access to all of those supports. For example, personal assistance. It wouldn't be, they're not SNAs per se, but a student that might need a personal assistant that would be provided on the basis of a needs assessment and funded by the FSD, as we saw. When this fund was given over to Solus in 2020, and in that document that I showed you, which is why you should download it and read it, it says that the level of support is determined by the institution. And that's the point of the needs assessment. And that's why you need to be very clear on exactly what you need. And those needs may be slightly different to what was required in school. And you need to go to that needs assessment and have that discussion with the individual institution. they apply to the fund for those supports, and that's how they are provided.
Thank you. A few people are asking me for your details, so I'm just going to throw it up there on the screen. They were looking for your website and information, so people can pick it up there from the screen if you're looking for that further. There was a question around the FSD that it didn't mention Down syndrome, and does it mean a person with Down syndrome does not qualify for a third level grant?
Well, first of all, it's not a grant. It's European social funding to support students in their journey through further education and higher education. We could take it, as it's not specifically mentioned, that intellectual disability or other specific disabilities outside of that list are not included, unless, of course, you also have a co-occurring disability. Now, as I said, I would be interested in seeing a challenge to that under equality legislation, under the Disability Act. If all goods and services have to be accessible to everybody, then presumably that funding should be available.
Very good, thank you. Another query came in from a parent who has a son who is 18, and she's looked up and researched some social skills exercises for him. However, most of them seem to be aimed at younger children. So she wondered if there was a social skills website or a resource that would be aimed more at his level, age 18.
There are some very good materials. For example, there is, again, it's the one I can think of at the top of my head is autism specific, but well, originally it was, but now they've expanded it to encompass all young people who need support with social skills. It's an American program, and it's called PEERS, P-E-E-R-S, and you can purchase it from Amazon. There is PEERS for adolescents. There is a PEERS program for use in schools by school professionals, and it's very, very good because it requires participation by parents as well. It's best done in a group, although I have used it myself with an individual, and it's all about, for example, entering and leaving conversations, exchanging information, trading information, they call it, making telephone calls, and so on and so forth. So that's worth looking at.
Okay, in the interest of time, we might just take one or two more. I'm sorry we can't get to all the questions. However, Alison can be contacted, or I am available as well at Inclusion Ireland. So know that there are resources out there to field your many questions. This one came in from a person who works in HSE funded services, understanding that HSE will not fund the National Learning Network and day services at the same time. However, a student can attend a day service and access local education classes or attend National Learning Network once training is complete. So it's sharing a bit of information.
Great.
Yeah. So my daughter is in junior cert. This is coming in from Maria, a parent. She's doing level 2 in mainstream. She's doing TY next September, and then school, nothing else after TY. She'll be 18 at the end of TY. What would you suggest in terms of where to go from there?
I would suggest that's entirely dependent on what she wants to do in her life. That goes right back to what we were just talking about this morning. So having that conversation, you know, as we did with Tara, I said, well, what do you want to do when you leave school? So once we've established what you actually want to do, then we can find out what is the most appropriate pathway for you to take. So that's quite a difficult question to answer. It's very dependent on what you want to do next, because what happens next might involve some supported work experience, or it might involve some further training. So that's as much as I can say really without knowing your daughter, because it's so person-centered and completely unique.
And one final question in terms of your book, Planning Transitions, is it going to be republished? That it's not available on Amazon new?
It's available on some Amazon websites. This is a fallout from Brexit. It's available from, it's print on demand. So it's not a question of being in stock. When people purchase it, it's printed and then it's sent. I believe it's available from Amazon.com. It's available weirdly from Amazon France. It's not available from Amazon UK. So yeah, it is available.
And people are looking for the PDF of your presentation, and Alison has kindly said she will make that available.
Of course, yeah.
So ought you be interested in that, do contact either Alison or myself, and we would be happy to share that with you. I'm going to close now and just thank Alison very much. I know that was a whistle-stop tour.
Yes.
And we do have that recorded, and we'll be sharing it. It will be up on our website as of next week. Again, know that we are available. There are 3 more webinar sessions in this series, at which questions will be answered, and we hope that each of you will take the opportunity either to contact us or to attend those seminars. So thank you very much, and thank you participants for attending today on this journey. And as Alison has so well put for us here today, it is a journey. It's good to begin early, asking those questions of the people that we support, our family members, and professionally, those who we work with, and in our own locality, ideally, looking to find ways to build a support circle and to begin this discovery process. So as we close here, a feedback evaluation will appear on screen, and we'd ask if you just would take an extra 2 minutes. If any queries appear in that, I will be attending to those to get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you very much for attending today. Lots of thanks for coming in as well, Alison, in the Q&A session. Lots of good information and food for thought. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Okay, thank you. Bye now.